Hello and welcome to Joyride with your hosts, the metaphysical moms, Tiffany and Carrie. Joyride takes you on a spin through all things spiritual and soulful, including holistic healing, energy work, and personal development. Now, here are your hosts, Tiffany and Carrie.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Joyride Show.
Hi guys, it's Tiffany.
And it's Carrie.
And we're the metaphysical moms, and we're so happy you are here to join us for another hour of spiritual talk and just having a sisterhood, brotherhood of metaphysical minds that are happy to just sit down and spin around the metaphysical block for a while.
And you're actually at our kitchen table, which is really fun. I want to do a quick shout out. So I have a friend of mine that I grew up with, known a long time, who transitioned recently, and I just found out last night. So my thoughts go out to his family and his girls and his lovely wife Amy. So David, Lindsay, from Spring,
went to
Texas.
high school together.
Yeah, and I've known him. I realized I've known him since I was about 7. So and anyway, so I know I've already had one big hug.
Have you tuned into him yet? And she said yes.
Yeah, this morning he came by and gave me a big hug with that big grin on his face, and he's good. He's good. So I just wanted to put that out there. So
we're thinking of you, David, and your transition, and the family that's still here. That's hard. And this is the anniversary of 9/11, so there's a lot of emotion today, and we're going to get into that here in a minute because we have a lovely guest rejoining us on our Joyride show. This is Ashley. Welcome back to Joyride. Hi. Aloha, Goddess.
Goddess sisters, it's beautiful to be back. Thank you for having me. And again, my prayers and blessings to David and his family as well. That's a beautiful, touching tribute.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, Ashley, you joined us last year, December, I think it was show number 77, and we talked all about frequencies and your journey to becoming authentic and the experiences that you had when you were the general manager at the Esoteric Ranch and the contact with your star family. And we had so much to talk about. We wanted to continue the conversation because you've moved on to many amazing other things, and the story continues. So.
Well, that's been my experience because I am blessed to call you my friend, and over the last year or so we've become friends, and it's just been amazing to watch it's like your road just did this, and it's just getting wider and beautiful, and I look forward to seeing where you are this time next year. I mean, it is, I can't imagine, it just exponentially is.
Well, I think that's happening for a lot of us and a lot of our listeners. I mean, your change of what's happening with your show and the new guidance the two of you are getting, that's really what our journey of self-mastery is all about. And holding the gratitude for all that we've walked, right? The initiations, the trials, the tribulations, the growth, the sisterhood. Although we met this past year, we've known each other in other realms and other times and other spaces. And that beautiful goddess sisterhood coming back together is really what propelled me to take these next steps. And oftentimes, those of you that are biological mothers know that there's pain in birth, right? There's a gestation period, and yet that new life is probably beyond what you can even imagine. And that's kind of what I personally am experiencing. And I know a lot of listeners are experiencing that as well.
Yes, definitely, as we go through these big transitions. And we were just saying, we talked about it before the show, that we wanted to honor the date that we're at today in our history of September 11th. And you had wanted to say a few words about that before we get too far into your journey.
Yeah, I did. I actually wanted to talk about a couple things. I was living in Australia when 9/11 happened, and I was doing my spiritual work and teaching workshops and things, but I also still had a corporate job. I was doing international conferences, and IBM was one of my clients. And my TV blew up the night before. It literally exploded. And so I'm sitting there on a teleconference call waiting for everyone to get on. We were doing an around the world educational program for IBM that was starting that new year, the year after, in the January. And so I'm waiting and no one else is showing up, and I'm checking to see if I've got the wrong time. And finally, one other person came on the call and said, "Is anyone else here?" And I said, "No." And they said, "We don't think the call is going to happen." And I said, "Why?" And they said, well, turn on your TV. I said, I can't. But that's how I found out about what happened, right? And so I then went into meditation and asked how I could be of service. What could I do in my small way, but I'm not diminishing myself, but how could I be of support? And I was I had done the Monroe Institute work, including the Soul Retrieval program, Robert Monroe Institute in Virginia, Journeys Out of the Body. And I had also done the Soul Retrieval one. And so I was brought to an area about 2 blocks away from the actual towers. And the way I saw it was there was a moving sidewalk of light going up to my left, kind of like an escalator, but it wasn't stairs. And it was about 1.5 blocks long. And at the top of this moving sidewalk of light were all these amazing silhouettes of light beings, okay? And as the people that had transitioned in the Twin Towers came towards me, I actually directed them up this moving sidewalk of light. And I said, it's okay, just please go this way. And as they went up the moving sidewalk of light, when they got to the top or closer to the top, the light being that was in front of them took on the characteristics of Jeshua or Mary or Buddha or their grandmother or whomever that was there to greet them and have them feel safe. And the reunion love and joy, even in such a tragic situation, was overwhelming for me. I mean, I was humbled to be of service in that way. A couple of them actually needed to go through me, if that makes sense, like they walked through my body before they went up. And just 3 days ago, a woman was here visiting this beautiful sanctuary where I now am, and she's a medium and helps people transition. And she said it's because their soul had not yet completely disconnected from their body. It wasn't that they were still alive. It was almost like the cord was still connected. And that's one of the things that they do is they walk through someone who's helping them transition to separate that, to completely be able to move on to their next realm. And it was such a beautiful and powerful situation. When I was in Australia, I was also working with Duncan Rhodes of Nexus Magazine, and I was bringing Skip Atwater, who was the scientific research gentleman at Monroe Institute, out to Australia to speak at the Nexus conference. He was supposed to be on one of those flights, but actually came a day early. And so that was an interesting coincidence. But as I meditated into the situation, as traumatic as it is in the human realm, because of course it is, the grief, the loss, we all know there's a lot more to the story than what's been revealed as far as who was actually behind it. I choose to honor those that have transitioned and to respect the grief, but to look at the higher vibration of what's happening. In my experience, in what message I got, was that there was a big contract at that time because the dark agenda had attempted to bring us down again. But when I tuned into it, the heart chakra of the planet opened so immensely during that time. I mean, there's the joke about New Yorkers paying the bus fare for other people, which, the stereotypical thing about New Yorkers is that they're not friendly. But the outpouring of compassion from around the planet, the connection that people had stopping to say there's got to be more to life than what I've been doing, I found a huge uptick in the number of people who called me about understanding more of who they are, whether it was for a session or a workshop. So again, I'm not diminishing at all the pain of the loss or the criminality of what happened. But for looking at it from a higher frequency, a higher perspective, it was an accelerating point on the awakening of humanity. Even though it feels like we lost a lot of rights with a lot of the, security and surveillance things that happened, on a metaphysical level, it was an acceleration that truly was a wake-up call for a lot of people to start researching who they are on a greater level. I don't know if you had any experience. I do want to do a little meditation, but I also want to stop and allow you guys to share.
Well,
So.
no, I think to not experience it from a higher place, or not to try to understand it, would be a waste. I mean, because it happened. So if we can understand more about ourselves, and if it cracks us open that much more, and like you say, that my heart just, I mean, we all heard the stories and just broke for them. But I love your perspective, and I mean, I just, as you were saying, the souls, I could see it, and it was just beautiful. Were some of them confused, or did they know what happened?
No, many of them were confused. They were kind of, staggering. And I was like a spiritual tour director, I just please come this way, just please come this way. And then that was that beautiful recognition of the peace that just overcame them, and the greeting that they received with that appearance of a being that would resonate for them, right? Because it's all source. It just takes on different appearances and flavors that we resonate with because of our culture or our religions or our metaphysical practice. And so to see that happen was such a gift for me. And it allowed me to know that those that transitioned were okay, right? I did have friends that went into the Twin Towers, the etheric Twin Towers, and they were actually rescuing people who were still kind of caught trying to get down stairways that no longer existed. I had a couple friends who were helping to rescue firemen and fire ladies, fire people, that were so committed to their first responder role that although they had transitioned, they were still trying to rescue people. I mean, so just that beauty of the divinity of who we truly are, and that seeing what actually happened. And of course, I think most of us on this journey understand that although there are some people that have to go through some healing, once they transition, there are some people that way, that it's really the people that are left here on the earth that go through the biggest grief and the biggest wounding. It's not those that have transitioned.
Yeah, it's still right there. I mean, I can just remember, I think everybody, it's one of those situations where you remember exactly what you were wearing, right. You remember what the weather was like, you remember everything about that day. It just gets imprinted because it was such a profound moment.
Such an energetic pulse. Can I ask one more thing? I visited last year, was it last year? New York, and we went.
Right.
And it was interesting because I can go, Tiff and I have done trips, and you can feel things, and you can feel, but there it was a very odd feeling. I walked away from it thinking it, and again, not diminishing anything, and I just didn't know if maybe there wasn't enough distance, if there wasn't, but there was something very off about the way my antenna took it all in. It is, and we can, I mean, we can talk about that off air, but
today is a beautiful day. I mean, a perfect day to talk about these kinds of things. Spirit always takes, the interviews the way they're meant to go, right? So did it feel like there were still souls that were out there, or did it feel like there was the cover-up energy, the suppression energy of the truth?
It felt,
when you said it was off, how would you describe it?
I thought that I would feel somber, and I thought that I would feel just that quiet reverence that you feel in different places. I didn't feel that. I felt, and I really don't want to offend anybody with this, but it felt contrived or kind of plastic. I don't know if it was just too soon. Again, it was an interesting, and even my husband, who isn't necessarily as verbal at this as I am, and really is in tune at this, he said, that just didn't feel right. He said there was something not reverent about it.
Well, when you go deeper into the truth of what happened on that day, right? And that's a whole nother show,
topic.
And I'm not the expert in that. But there is so much information and so many inconsistencies of what mass media and the powers that were tried to brainwash us about what happened, right? And so that false honoring by the powers that were has a frequency that's what it feels to me that you picked up on there, right? It's the cover-up energy, or that illusion of the fact that the very dark government structure that created that situation created a memorial that meant nothing, because they were not grieving. They had an agenda behind it.
Okay,
Does that resonate for you? If it doesn't,
that does resonate. And it wasn't, I mean, and again, it wasn't about the lives that were lost. I mean, it wasn't about that. It was an overall feeling. So,
of course.
Thank you for that. So
how do you ladies feel about just doing a short little
I would love that. I would
holding
love
peace space? You know, there's a beautiful saying: you don't pray for rain, you pray rain. So you don't pray for peace, you hold the frequency of peace, right? So, and it doesn't matter if people listen to this on 9/11 or listen to this at another time. The intention is that we move from this old program of hate and killing each other into a space of holding unity consciousness. And that was my intention, to do a short meditation on that, if you're all right. Okay, so those do you want to just...
Can I add one thing?
Of course.
We just went through Harvey last year as Houston, and everything, and it felt similar to 9/11. You know, not as many lives were lost, thank goodness, but it was just this huge change. And I know the Carolinas are looking at a storm that's bearing down on them. So I want to do that anti-rain pray for them.
Absolutely. Include all of that. It's just...
We're going to blow it away out to sea. Thank you.
All right. Just close our eyes and just take some deep breaths and just allow all the mental activity about what happened on 9/11 and who was behind it just be lifted away. Because truly it's all about what we hold in our hearts. And as we breathe that divine light, divine love, and divine truth into our hearts, we connect with the greater truth of the divinity of humankind. Because truly the majority of humankind has that heart space and want the same thing: a roof over their head, food on the table, and a better life for their children. So as we all in our own way connect to Source, bringing the light down through our crown chakras, down through our being, and blessing it down through the bottoms of our feet into Gaia Sophia, our mother, the earth. Seeing that light going into the center of the earth, into her heart, and connecting in. And knowing whether we feel like this planet is our home or not, Gaia Sophia embraces each and every one of us as one of her own. And we breathe her light back up into our heart. So our divine connection to Source, to all that we are, flows down into our hearts. And our connection with Gaia flows up into our hearts until our hearts are overflowing with the absolute love from Source. And just with our intending, we connect into our I am presence, the truth of who we are, divine in our own right. And from that space, we ask all of our teachers and guides, our higher selves, to create sacred space around us. And know that around the planet today, many people are holding space, being peace, breathing peace, seeing peace, for that is humanity's destiny if we choose it. And so from each of our hearts, connecting into a central point above our planet. It doesn't matter where it is, into the one heart of all that is. And allow yourself to receive that love back into your heart as you send your love into that one heart. And whether it's the mother with her child in Africa, the fisherman in Cambodia, it doesn't matter. We are all one. And from that one heart, see the divine light, love, and truth of our divinity enveloping planet Earth. All of humanity attuned to the frequency of peace. And feel what it feels like in your body to be attuned to the reality that there is a timeline where we are in peace. We are peace. To all the families of those who died and the first responders on 9/11, see them surrounded in this enveloping frequency of peace. To all of us who have lost loved ones or have had loved ones transition, for there is no loss, allow yourself to receive that peace as well. David and his family, those in Texas that were affected by the hurricane last year, and those on the eastern coast, especially the Carolinas. See all of us filled with this peace and love and grace. And know this is who we choose to be. This is the world we choose to live in. And we ask Gaia, and we ask the nature spirits, and we ask the elementals for what is for the highest and best to reroute the hurricane on the East Coast if that is in divine order, where we don't always know what is the greater plan. And for those listening who have turmoil in their life, receive this peace into your own heart. And as you receive it, walk in this peace today. A smile on your face. Make eye contact with those around you. Be the divine human that you are. So we ask that each of you are recalibrated to the highest possible frequency available to you at this time. And we honor you for the courage to be on the planet during this amazing time of awakening. As you celebrate all of those surrounded in this peace, celebrate yourself. Know that you are loved and honored and cherished and magnificent beyond your imagination. Anchoring the peace down through your body back into Gaia, allowing her to spread it across the planet in all those places that we may not be aware of. And then slowly and gently, returning to this new now moment with the joy in your heart of the love that divine has for you. And so it is.
Oh, wow. You too. Just my left eye is crying. Just my left eye is crying. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, goddesses, for co-creating that space. I felt your hearts.
And it's that moment of being peace. And that's what, we wish everybody in the world could just be peaceful. And then when you realize, oh, it's me right here, right now, embodying this peace and then carrying that out. and then
Yes.
living from that space. And like you said, giving it through your eyes, through your smile, through your heart, however you're called to do, is creating that timeline of peace.
Yeah. Yeah. It all starts here, right? We know that. It all starts here. Even in the times of our greatest trials and tribulations, you know, we've all been through such upheaval this year, right? In our own ways. And you know, the doorway that we just went through with the 3 eclipses, right? That all of that energy, the Lion's Gate, that beautiful acceleration of the union of the divine feminine and divine masculine, right? And that coming together in that centered space is the exponential magnifier of seeing what we just held space for being in truth. Because first it's about being at peace here, our own divine masculine and divine feminine, right? Being at peace within ourselves, then being at peace within our relationships, whether they're romantic or not, and then being at peace within our community, and then at peace with the world. I just yesterday had a conversation with a beautiful woman. I'm going to have her on Threshold to Ascension Radio in about a month. A dear friend of mine named Pat, who just got back from a journey to Kenya on one of those volunteer vacations where they went out into the villages to assist with medical care, right? And she was sharing her story. I've been blessed at traveling to, I don't know, over 60 countries. And as she was telling me the stories, it was very heartwarming. And I asked her, what of the journey brought you the greatest joy? Because it's easy to look at how someone else's living circumstances are different than ours, and to perhaps have an opinion of that. But when we travel looking for the beauty in the place, it's a totally different experience. And she talked about how the clinic went into the schools, and there were these little kids, like, you know, 4 and 5 years old, whose teacher left the room, and they were told to stay in the room, but they all came out and wanted to talk to her, right? And they were touching her, and she just had this filled with joy, and she was playing with them and teasing them. And the teacher came up, and they ran back into the room, and the teacher went to scold them, and Pat said, it was my fault, right? That I was the one that instigated it because I was interacting with it. And then they asked her a bunch of questions about where she lived and what life was like. And can you just feel that joy of these little, beautiful, you know, innocent beings, young ones interacting with you from a culture that you have not personally experienced yet? And that's the gift of that trip, right? Sure, the homes may be different and the water system may be different, but the joy is that individual soul and those connections. To me, that's really why we're here.
Oh, completely. Completely. Well, and for our viewers that are watching, this is what Ashley does. She sees the world from this gorgeous place, and if you ever want a personal session or you want to tune into more of Ashley and her perspective, you have goldengoddesses.org.
Right.
And that's a website where people can find your workshops, your spiritual counseling, your Threshold to Ascension Radio that you do on Thursdays at 7 p.m. on bbsradio.com. But you do one-on-ones with people to really help them through their trials and tribulations through these workshops and one-on-one sessions to help make this personal transformation and hold that space for each person's journey.
You know, I laugh, you know how you look back at your childhood and you go, oh, I see, I was being trained. I was actually Dear Ashley in grade school and high school. Yeah. Literally, people would write me notes, right? You know, and I was counseling back in those days, and I just recently reflected back on that. And we all still have, you know, I still have my journey of healing. So, you know, I still do my own work, but that's what I've been guided to go back into as things transitioned, and it was time for me to leave ESETI, right? And I'm very grateful for my experiences there and all that I learned, and the contact and the people who I had an opportunity to interact with. And Spirit has a way of ending one chapter, you know, perhaps not the way you thought it was going to end, but it was really, what's the gift? You know, what's the gift in this new movement? And this was me being called to step more into the sisterhood, right? Into this goddess energy. And the spiritual counseling sessions, although I have clairvoyancy, I don't talk about them as a clairvoyant reading. It's truly about what's happening in your life and then tuning in and empowering people to step into their own choices. And it's really hard to explain. I ask people to send me 3 topics that they'd like to go over, what's happening in their life. And then I also ask for their birthday, because I do a little bit of numerology. Because we're in 11 year, in a master universal year, there's a lot that's happening from that way as well. And then I just receive the guidance to ask them questions to help them come to their own realizations, because the way my team works is honoring that each of us is a master. And when we come to our own awarenesses, it sticks more.
Right.
That's the technical term. It sticks more.
I love that.
So those listeners that I am honored, and I would like to honor the your gift of having me on your show. I would like to offer to the Joyride Club listeners an opportunity to win a 90-minute session at their own. We can work on the timing, and if you go on to the website goldengoddesses.org and sign up for the mailing list, then on September 18th, so we'll give it a week, I'll do the drawing. I'll let you guys know who it is in case you want to announce it on air, and then I'll obviously contact them via email as well. So, and it can be about anything. I just had a conversation with a woman yesterday who's moving to a farm in New York, and she was asking about entities that were there. And I tuned in and I said, there are 3 powerful portals on this land. One is active, one is halfway active, and one is waiting for you. And the elementals on this land are a little unhappy with how the previous guardians of the land, I won't say owners, didn't realize its potential. And there is a beautiful opportunity for this woman to interact with the elementals. And so we talked about, so that was just one of the things that I've done.
Oh, thank you so much for offering
a session. But I've already signed up, so we'll talk about that after.
Okay, so we'll put all the links under the video posting so people can log on to Golden Goddesses, with an S, lots of D's and S's in that, goldengoddesses.org, and sign up for the newsletter to win a 90-minute session. That's wonderful.
You can cover a lot of ground. Okay, so talk to us more about your series that you do. So you're about to wrap up Lucid Dreaming.
Lucid Dreaming teleconference.
Yeah, so I have been doing for a couple of years a Wednesday night teleconference call. And it was an opportunity to bring community together. And to support people with just getting together once a week. And there's been a different series. I've got some old recordings, from Connecting to Your Star Family. The series before this one that's going to be ending October 3rd was Embodying Your I Am Presence. And then this one is Lucid Dreaming for Star Nation Contact. We're starting week 5 this Wednesday. And so, people are at different levels. Some are still just beginning to remember their dreams. Some are having lucid dreams but not controlling them, and some are more active. And so that's the series that's available on the goldengoddesses.org website under Toolkit. I do want to be transparent with your viewers in that this course requires that you do the home play.
Oh, I love home play.
Home play, right? Because we all have 2 hours.
Work is not in her vocabulary. Everything's play.
I don't. But we all have 2 hours every night when we're in the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep anyways. So why not allow that to be another extension of our metaphysical journey and bring in that that guidance. So even for people who feel that they don't have clairvoyancy, or they don't feel yet that they're hearing their team, the dream realm, which is just another level of consciousness, right? I mean, it goes back to the ancient Chinese and how dreams were used for divination and understanding. So when we understand that realm is just another level of consciousness and what we can do and find answers in. And it's not something that just listening every Wednesday is necessarily going, and that's where the teaching happens. And then you play with it, right, in the week in between. One of my most powerful lucid dreams was shortly after my dad transitioned almost 20 years ago. And so I had my lucid dream and I asked to see him. And we went to the old farmhouse that I grew up in. And it was beautiful because all of us that were alive were like a sepia brown, like an ancient an old agent, an old photograph, right? And all of those who had transitioned, my father, his parents, my uncle, others, were in this color unlike anything I've ever seen, right? It's not a color like you see here on the earth. And so it was this beautiful reunion of all of us. And I was able to really see that he was okay, right? And have that beautiful, but that came from a lucid dream, waking up, I don't know what I was doing. And I set the intention to actually go there. So that's the series that's ending. And that's a whole, there's a whole lot of stories with that.
The recordings are available online, so you can still,
and goldengoddesses.org under the toolkit. So we've got all the 1 through 4 weeks are up, including the home play, the meditation, and the full teleconference. There's the full teleconference recording, the meditation excerpt, so people can just listen to that. And the home play PDF is there as well. So, but starting October 10th, it's interesting, as we were talking about during this interview and talking about the divine union and the goddess energy and that divine feminine, divine masculine balance, and the eros gamos, which is the sacred union, right? It's the sacred marriage of the feminine, the masculine, first within, and then, like I said, in relationship, and then globally. So as I was kind of tuning in to that, I was told that starting October 10th, that's the new series. So this is hot off the press. It literally just came in about 5 a.m. this morning, right? I usually don't get the subject until the week before, so thank you for allowing that to come through, because this is really important. My partner Joseph, when he and I first got together, we were in a hotel in San Diego, and he was very angry at that point because he was in a corporate life that wasn't fulfilling his heart. And we're spooning in bed. I won't give you too much information. We're spooning in bed, and he's yelling at source. He's so, like, you know, that male energy, right? That energy of, and he's yelling. He said, "You don't understand what it's like down here. You don't understand that we need currency to survive, and that there has to be a balance." And he goes, "I'm sick and tired of this." And he was just really angry because he had been in one of his partners in his previous company had embezzled over $250,000. So he went from being very affluent to a totally different journey, and then was in this other business that was a challenge, right? And so as he's having this rant behind me, I'm in a hypnagogic state. And all of a sudden, I'm there, and I'm myself, and I'm my I am presence at the same time. It was a dual consciousness, which is truly what we're bringing in here, right? Is having the multiple levels of consciousness at the same time. And in this dual level of consciousness, I saw the sacred marriage that Joseph and I had in the higher realms, complete ceremonial garb, our crystal staffs, as we agreed to connect up here on the earth in this lifetime. And the love in my heart, her heart, is unlike anything I can describe, and get teary, in human terms. It wasn't, because I checked in, it wasn't unity consciousness love, it wasn't the oneness love, it was definitely love for another being, right? But it was no attachment, no judgment. It was this pure love of that divine union. And so as he's yelling behind me, and I'm overflowing in this love and rapture, he says,
talk about yin and yang. It doesn't
he says, "So that's it, I'm done with this, because you don't understand." He's yelling at source. And as he said that, my heart broke. And I felt the grief in my heart, right? And I said to him, "If that is your choice, I will always love you. I will miss you, and I will always love you," because I knew that I needed to continue on my journey. But I had that glimpse of that absolute love, that eros gamos, that is in that second and third phases once we have it within ourselves. And so with what happened this past year, in the attack energetically that 3 of us went under. When it was all put on Joseph, I did a lot of soul reflection. And I asked Joseph if he was willing to look into what was going on, and he said yes. If his answer had been no, my response would have been different. But as his answer was yes, and as he found out that there was something, right, that had attacked all 3 of us at the same time, when I was asked to make a choice between Joseph and something else that was dear to me, I knew my contract with both of them wasn't finished. But I also knew that if Joseph was willing to walk his path, that we didn't come here perfect. We came here to go through our journey of self-mastery and to make choices. And whatever the choice was is the right choice. But at that point, since he chose to get healing, right, that I knew that that was part of the journey for us to get to the vision that I saw. And so I had, at that point, a very clear understanding of, if I was being forced to make a decision like that, that was not in unity consciousness. If someone is willing to get healing, then isn't that when we're all supposed to come together, right? And so the beauty of that is, although Joseph almost left the planet in July with his heart situation, he has come into this opening more of his heart now, and it has allowed me to come more into my own goddess light, and to bring in the energies of what this eclipse window was about. And part of it was about the divine feminine no longer enabling, right? No longer taking a back seat. And I'm not talking just about Joseph, because the masculine can do that, whether it's a business relationship or a friend relationship. And it's about, first of all, the divine feminine, us standing in our light and our truth and our heart and speaking our truth. And it's about no longer giving the ceremony to the men to make them feel better. And I'll come back to that in a second to explain that. It's also about understanding when we as women have become perhaps a little bit controlling, right? I mean, and I own that. And so to me, to be able to step back and support Joseph in stepping into all that he is. And that's the divine balance. You know, we're not all perfect. We are healing as women, divine feminine, and the men are healing as well. And as we pull that back and support them in being who they are and use our voice to be who we are, I have a beautiful thing on my website. You know, a goddess does not diminish her light to make someone else feel more comfortable. But it's also coming at it from that heart space. And so it allows the divine masculine, who has been programmed for a very long time to be a certain way in that whole patriarchal control program, especially those of us that are of a certain generation, right? The younger ones coming up now don't have that same limitation, which is the beauty of it. But so as we come into that healing of it within and then in partnership, it's beautiful how that shows and emanates. And so I've talked to many people and counseled many people who are looking for the relationship or are having challenges in their relationship. And first, it comes from us as women and divine feminine speaking our truth and asking for what we need from a place of an open heart, not the energy behind it, which can be a balance, right? I have to ask for this and I'm already upset that I may not get it or I might not be heard. And we've seen a lot of this with the Me Too movement and a lot of other things that are happening. And then it's the masculine being okay with being vulnerable, right? And that beauty of that nurturing and understanding we all have divine feminine, divine masculine within. And I'm not talking about gender orientation, because we can all present in different forms, but the energy behind it, that sacred union, that eros gamos, and truly that's also the connection of honoring Gaia, the mother, our earth, the Gaia Sophia. Laura Eisenhower talks about it. Lisa Renee talks about it. Many beautiful goddess beings are talking about it. I just kind of come back to the ceremony. One of the beautiful things I love about Joseph is he was a sun dancer. And he sundanced in the World Council of Elders Sundance. So it was many, many indigenous beliefs, but it was a Lakota altar. And we all go through our journeys, and I honor all cultures. And to me personally, it is time to rethink how we perceive when a woman is in her moon cycle. And it was in the beginning with this Native American ceremony that was World Council of Elders ceremony. So there was Aboriginals from Australia, there were New Zealand elders, Maori, there were Japanese sensei, there was all these beautiful beings. But Joseph had an issue that the women that wanted to dance, that all of a sudden were on their moon, were put in a teepee, kind of hidden away, right? Almost as if it was a dark energy. And Joseph said, this does not sit with me. There is nothing more beautiful than that part of a woman and her ability to create life. And this part, that is powerful. I would like to be honored to be invited to be in a sweat lodge with women who are on their moon because of the power of that divine feminine energy. And so it was his voice, along with others, that the next year, the moon teepee was brought to just by the North Gate. And so every time the dancers went around, they honored the women that were on their moon versus shunning them away because it was, it was so that's that unity and that divinity and that honoring of each other that really is, again, a really vital component of our moving into the new earth and that divinity consciousness.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I have a question though. So
Sure.
Are they still, even though the tent's closer, basically one of my favorite books is The Red Tent, and it was believed that women had power, like a tremendous amount of power, and that's why they were put away, or not put away, but so the tent's closer, but can they still not dance during that? When they're...
So the teepee is right. They're not in the circle. Right. I mean, he's completed his commitment. Right. So he's not still sun dancing, but they brought it right outside. So the teepee was right outside the North Gate on the outside of the circle, but they had their own sacred space and they would dance in front of their teepee. So they weren't yet in the circle, but they weren't over the hill either. Right. And so the grandfather of the ceremony, Grandfather Frank, who has since transitioned, he was telling us a beautiful story about he's from Sitting Bull's lineage, but I think an aunt of Sitting Bull, it's not direct, but the family of Sitting Bull. And he was actually given the feminine teachings of his lineage. And he shared with us, many people aren't aware that up until the time the white man came to this country, the women were the ones that conducted the ceremony. They were the ceremonial leaders. They did the ceremony. And when the atrocities, I can only say it that way, right, happened, and the indigenous people were imprisoned on reservations, the men lost a great deal of who they were, who they are. And so the women gave the ceremonies to the men as a way to support them in a way finding a purpose again. Isn't that powerful?
It is very powerful.
Now, in some realms, like in a lot of white cultures or other cultures, the patriarchy got a little out of control and started suppressing the divine feminine. Now, please, if there are any indigenous listeners, I do not profess to be an expert on your culture. I only share with you what Grandfather Frank shared with me. right? And this gifting of the ceremonies was done out of love and support, right? But if you look at that as an example of where we are now, it now is the time where we both stand together in ceremony, right? It's not the women overtaking the men or the men overtaking the women. It's time for us to see each other and in each hold our space and each honor the beauty in what's reflected back to us, regardless of where your heart connection is, right? Again, I don't get into the whole gender side of it, but just that connection. So that Eros Gamos is happening. It's becoming, we're seeing it in the human collective consciousness, right? With the Me Too movements, with all these things, people finally being able to speak up. You know, yes, you know, people always say, well, what about the ones that are making false accusations? It's sad, but if 90% are accurate and 10% are not, we can obviously correct those false accusations. But understand it's 90% that are accurate. Right. And so let's not throw that out as, you know, when something is used to undermine, right? Any type of change is when you can find the one thing that may be out of alignment. So this, and the beauty is that men are coming forward that they were abused as well, right? And so it's sad that it happens that way. This is the respect for each other on all levels. Mm-hmm. And it starts with respecting here within ourselves and then going forward. So this Eros Gamos, this divine union, this balancing of the divine feminine and masculine and being comfortable in who we are. I know that when I was, you know, in my early days, in my 20s, I was more masculine in my career to get ahead. Does that make sense? Absolutely. I had to shut down my feelings. I had to be tough. I had to be a tough negotiator. I had to step into this. And so it's finding the balance between that within each of us. That's at union. And, you know, goddesses come in all shapes and sizes, right? That whole divine feminine is all shapes and sizes, from the grandmother, you know, to the newbie. So it's all beautiful. And the same with the divine masculine.
I'm finding the masculine coming more on, like, coming on board, because in business, I suck. I mean, and I say that because it's, you tell me, if somebody says, okay, how about 10? Okay. I don't realize that, oh, that's just your opening bid. And I don't want to have to fight for what I get. I don't want to have to outmaneuver you and think 4 steps ahead. I don't want it. Just tell me what you need, and I'll tell you what I need. And so I was never, and so a couple of times I got wounded. I felt wounded because things weren't as they seem. And it was, I didn't understand that. But I am finding this, it really is, Tiffany and I talked about this. It's this warrior vibe. It's this warrior feeling I have that, and it's not that I want to hurt anyone. It's just, I want to stand up. And I don't know if it's the pendulum swings and you just want to go, and then you're calm, and it is as it should be. It's a quiet, I mean, I am a female, and I love pretty, and I love soft, and I love, but at the same time, to be able to access the warrior side is probably a better way of how I'm thinking about it. Yeah. Well,
and it's at union within, right? I love, you know, that you've got Wonder Woman coming out, right? And those kinds of, and in the Black Panther, you know, the strong female warrior energy, you know, all of that beauty. And it's the balance between the two, right? That, you know, it's for the masculine to find the balance and for the feminine to find the balance within. My, years ago, my first spiritual company was called Samurai of Light. Now, samurai is to be in service to. That's actually kind of the translation. So if you think of yourself as the samurai of light, or the, you know, that goddess of light, or that warrior for truth, the word warrior to me, I still have a little bit of a frequency. Yeah. Because the warrior has more of that. Sorry.
I just shut out right there when you were saying I have a problem with the frequency, and then the frame froze. So you're affecting your own video signal.
And it happens. Yeah, it happens
Well,
when you say something that's very, that it's emotional, you freeze.
yes, well, I had that effect at electronics. But so the warrior, for me personally, the collective consciousness energy attached to the word warrior is a bit too Mars for me, is a bit too aggressive for me, and that's me. You know, your listeners may feel the word differently than I do.
Right.
And so, but when we understand that it's about authenticity and truth, right? Speaking your truth from your heart, from a place of empowerment, where you're not going to go small to make someone else feel better, or you're not going to go small because you think if you stand in the truth of who you are, you won't be liked, right? So when we embody that, that's why I love the goddess energy, because to me, the goddess energy is strong and empowered and regal and nurturing and caring. It's all of that combined. The goddess that, as I see it, is the aspect of me that was given the name Thunderheart, right? It's that energy that will not put up with bullshit anymore, but finds the way to do it from the heart, not from an attack. To me, the warrior energy is oftentimes, and I'm not talking about male or female, the warrior energy in the collective consciousness is more about that cutthroat type of business. Yeah. And to me, the Eros Gamos, that unit, is to be able to negotiate in a win-win situation.
Right. I love that.
And so that's the intention of this new course that will be starting October 10th. But that's also the intention of what this journey is that I've been gifted with this year, you know, to not react when things are said about me, right? Or to find a place to come at it from a higher frequency. And that's a whole nother interview that may or may not happen, as we've talked about, but I choose to hold a higher frequency because that's the only way I can stay in my integrity.
And that's how we heal.
It is how we heal.
And I'm seeing it represented in lots of different ways. You talked about the Me Too movement, you know, people getting new rights. There was just an interview I saw recently with Oprah. Can't remember his name right now, but he's one of the corporate leaders of LinkedIn, I think. And he was talking about leadership with compassion and how he used to have that very ego-driven, cutthroat, get ahead. And when he met his wife and got married, he developed this whole side of compassionate leadership.
Right.
And so for a man to step into that more feminine strength has transformed the entire company and set an example for everybody else. And just listening to that interview, I was thinking about my family, leadership in my, you know, leadership of my children, but leadership in the family and how you hear people compassionately, how you make decisions collectively and set boundaries. It was just such a great. I just hear what you're saying, and then I see that that's the time, that's the evolution of us to step into this, because we can't nuke ourselves out of into peace. We've got to do it lovingly and compassionately, and especially on the heels of 9/11 with such an attack, and we want to attack back. And it's like, is that, I can understand that impulse, but is that really the long-term answer for this, you know, blow to blow? And how do we step into a more compassionate, still respecting our boundaries and strength, not just in our personal relationships, but on a global scale? So this healed feminine and healed masculine energy together is so powerful, and everybody has the capacity for it. And I love that you're offering this conversation and this one-on-one guidance to help people recognize where they're maybe blocking their own or holding a frequency that's not serving them anymore, or some cultural lineage that It's served its purpose, and let's move on. Let's have a deeper conversation now.
Keep it moving.
Yeah. Well, I had a conversation with someone about, from the galactic side, what happened in Orion, when the reptilians attacked and that whole thing happened. And
oh yeah, that whole thing. It's kind of like,
I actually know what she's talking about.
I
was
do.
Just thinking.
I know, but you can understand. Ashley has this long history, so you kind of throw that out there. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you got to go do the research because it's all out there.
Well, and we can always chat more, but or people can email me at Ashli@goldengoddesses.org, ASHLI. So I had this conversation. At first, I couldn't understand, because a lot of the beings we were working with were 6-dimensional Orions. And so my question was, well, if there's 6-dimensional Orions, how could there have been a war in the 6th dimension? That didn't register to me, because the 5th dimension is unity consciousness. And that opened up doorway of exploration. And it, just like we've gone through an evolution, so have our star brothers and sisters. And so the war actually happened during the 4th dimensional Orion time, right? And so there was a whole big thing about, should they go to battle, shouldn't they go to battle, whatever. And I kind of got this message that's a little bit controversial. But it's that if we truly believe we're infinite beings of light, okay, and we've been at war over and over and over and over again, what happens if we just choose to not participate anymore? Now, for some, I understand that they're not so keen on getting shot and killed, right? And if enough of us are saying we're not afraid anymore, and we choose not to hold that frequency anymore, what is the next evolution of that? An example is when I lived in Australia, there was a woman who did satsang. I'm not a strong, I don't know a lot about that realm, but I used to go to her place for satsang. Beautiful, etheric, very, very all dressed in white, beautiful feminine energy. And she told the story about how she actually was a mother in a city in Ohio. I'm not going to name a city because I don't want to badmouth the city, right? And she was in Ohio, and she had a young child. She was married, and she was happy. She was on her spiritual journey. And she got attacked and dragged into an alley and was raped, and the gentleman was going to kill her. And she looked into his eyes, and she said, "I love you, and I forgive you." And he dropped the weapon, and he got up and left, and she had a spiritual awakening.
Oh, wow.
And in that moment, she went through a major transcendence and transition, and she was guided to leave her family and her child, which is sad, but she's been on this journey ever since. And that's one instance. We've heard about robbers that are invited into people's homes, and people start talking to them, right? And I'm not giving anyone advice of how to deal with the situation, but I'm talking about, what's the definition of stupidity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Many people call me naive, right? Because I choose to hold a higher frequency of love and light. I haven't shared this in any of my interviews, but when I was in my 20s in Australia, when I was in the spiritual group, kind of my beginning points, I started channeling this being. It was a feminine energy, and she was giving, people were asking her questions, and she was doing all these different things. She kept telling me that love is the only truth. Love is all that's important. Love is the highest frequency. Love is the most powerful weapon to overcome anything. And I'm like, yeah, right? Because I was like, come on, give me something that,
I'm giving you the answer here. It's love.
Give me something.
It transcends everything.
But that was basically very simple. And but I was not yet at that point of understanding what that meant. And someone in the group asked her what her name was. And she said, "I am the Golden Goddess."
There she is.
I'll be very transparent. I wanted her name to be Mabel. I wanted her name to be Mabel or Betty because I did not in that time feel good enough to bring through a being that called herself the Golden Goddess. Now is the time. This is what my journey has brought me to, but also I am grateful for all the experiences along the way, because just like you in your beautiful practices that you do, your life journey allows you to be more empathic with people and empathetic with people that are going through their own trials because you've lived something similar, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have no regrets, but I have to laugh because I think she's been knocking on the door saying, you know, it's time now. It's time now. And so, exactly.
Well, when one door closes, another one is...
Well, you know, I think one was slammed up behind me on purpose because this one was getting impatient.
Yeah, it's like, open the door.
It's time now for all of us to really, you know, it's not about being egotistic. You know, again, that's another thing that's used against people. It's about no longer being small. You can own who you are with grace, right? You can stand in your light and your power, whether you do it privately or publicly, with grace. A goddess does not diminish her light to make someone else feel more comfortable. A narcissist never worries if they're being too egotistical.
You told me that. You told me that when I think it was maybe even the first. So first time I talked to her, I called out to the ranch and I left a message, and then you called me back a while after that, and I think we talked for an hour and a half, and and I said, I'm worried. I don't want my ego to get out of control. I don't. And you said, well, because you're saying that, it won't. And that was just, and I've always held on to that, you know, because I'm perfect. I am no, I'm teasing. I just...
But you are perfect in your imperfection. I don't want to diminish that. You are perfect exactly as you are in this now moment.
Yeah. And that's huge to wrap your brain around. It really is, because we think, well, if I did this, or if I wasn't this, or if I did that.
There's this perfect future self that when I get there, then I'll be. And it's perfect. This, you know, we do want to evolve, but this is exactly the evolution
as
of
it should be.
Yeah.
And all of our life journey, you know, is the mana that allows us to remember who we are, right?
You're so much better than me. I always say it's the shit that's the fertilizer. You gotta have shit to fertilize the flowers.
Well, you're in Texas.
Yours is better. But you know what, though? It is. And I just want to point this out, that I've often wondered that, and you just touched on that. I've often wondered, because I have met my galactic self. I don't know what to say. And I do know about these unseen influences, and there are battles going on. And I think, well, if we just die, what's the problem? I mean, and I mean, it kind of stinks to just, you know, say that in 1946, and that's a different story. I mean, going through some of these things, but at the same time, I love if I really want to stop and grasp that, because if we all put it down and said, I love you. It's not that, okay, guess what? Now you're a slave. No. I mean, it is. And I think that's the fear, is that if I acquiesce or become submissive, then people will do to me things I don't want. And I want, you know, there's that sense of control. And there is that sense of, I want to be in control. I don't want someone else to be in control of me. And so how do you take that? Like, how do we... in that moment, how do we love if someone wants to overcome us or control
Well, that's
us?
where it comes in understanding. Are they trying to overcome us, or am I allowing myself to be overcome?
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting dichotomy that's created, that we either have to be this or this. Right. We either have to be a warrior or submissive.
Duality. Where
we're going is the eros gamos, the union between. So standing in my truth and speaking my truth can be done from my heart with a lot of compassion and empowerment, but still standing my ground. Yeah. And we can agree to disagree. And in my authenticity, I can choose to no longer be a doormat. right?
Right.
And then make sometimes difficult choices. But it is that understanding that we don't have to fight our way out of it or be submissive.
Right.
That is exactly what that union is. The ability to honor each other enough that we can speak our truth from our hearts without attachment, without worrying about how you're going to react, and without reacting if your button gets pushed by what I say, if it's truly coming from my heart. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So we live most of our lives initially with buttons getting pushed. I push your button, you push my button, Joseph pushes my button, I push his button, right? We go back and forth.
Reality shows, it's full of
Right.
it.
Exactly. And then we begin to understand that I don't want to be this way. And so we try to find our voice. And sometimes in trying to find our voice, we try to find our voice, right? Like this. I'm going to convince you. And then we move into the space of finding our voice, being able to speak from our heart without attachment to the outcome, right? That's our intention. They may react from their wound, depending on where they are in their awareness or in that moment. Then I have the choice. Boom, I feel this coming back at me. My inert reaction is to react, but I'm going to take a deep breath. And I'm going to go into my heart. And I'm going to respond back from my heart. And it's like anything else, the more we dance with that, the more we play with that, the more we have the conscious intention for that, the easier it becomes. And it's if I'm no longer reacting, I'm not sending out an energy that you unconsciously react to.
Right. So much
and
of
I
this
hold
is
space for someone else, right? Now, the challenge is if we send an invitation to someone like I experienced recently to have a heart-to-heart, right? And that person refuses to do it, then there's a choice. Then there's not an honoring there. And so it's sad, right? It's heartbreaking, and it opens up other doors. And other people can diminish, that was a commitment that was made. But truly, that's important to me. If I give you my word that I will speak my truth to you from my heart, and you give me your word, then that's a sacred contract that is very important. It doesn't mean we're not going to stumble and fall. Sometimes I'm going to react, sometimes you're going to react. But when we understand that, we then can come back to the healing. Yeah. And so it's that balance. It's one of the 3D applications of the Eros Gamos, right? It's not warrior, submissive, it's that union. And so how do we can read about Eros Gamos, we can do meditations, we can understand it, but how do we walk it, right? How do we breathe it? How do we see it? And I don't mean to be oversimplifying something that is a very powerful initiation path, but I always like to start with the foundation. And how do we apply it to day to day? Because I am very intelligent.
Yeah.
My mind absorbs a lot of information, processes a lot of information. I see 360 degrees around any situation. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying it that way. I'm in my imperfections. I have also come to a point where I used to be all about this, and now my brain gets to overload, and my soul wants me to bring it here. Right? Yeah. And to live it, breathe it, be it. And that's why on my bio on Threshold to Ascension Radio, it says brings the 3D, the esoteric into the 3D life. Because again, with the spiritual counseling sessions, with the other things we do, it's about how do I walk it, talk it, breathe it, be it. The time for sitting on the mountain and meditating for 20 years, right? That's not our mastery. Someone said to me, they work for a big company. This woman's been going through a lot of misogyny, and she began to step up, and beautiful things are happening, and she brought the magic back into a big negotiation. And I told her, I said, in our previous or parallel times, our mystery schools were the temples and the pyramids or the cenotes or whatever. Our mystery schools now are our homes and our relationships, our corporate lives, right? It's not that you're wasting your time in that, waiting for your mission to reveal itself, when you look at where you are as your mystery school, it takes a whole different understanding of applying what you know is your self-mastery in that environment.
That's beautiful. Well said. Well, and I just want to recap that because I feel like it's something that you said. When I try to fight and I try to get my point across, it never goes well. But when I drop into my heart and say, hey, help me with this, then I can get my needs across and still hear. And it may be a little tense, but it's not, people are heard. And I think it's that energy. Oh my gosh, we could just talk for hours.
I know. I know that you've got some,
we do.
Some of your new radio show coming up and your new format. You got someone coming in for that, so I do want to honor that time as well and tell you how much I love you both.
I love you.
And what an honor it is to reconnect with you after all. We've talked about where we've been before, but to go into that a little bit deeper. I look forward to having you individually on Threshold to Ascension Radio soon. And to any of your listeners that want to go to goldengoddesses.org, sign up for the newsletter. You'll get the announcements about the radio show. The radio show is focused on interviewing people that can give also guidance on things to apply into your 3D life on your journey, as well as sharing information. And also the Golden Goddesses newsletter. And I'll be announcing the Eros Gamos in about a week or two. I think 2 weeks we'll have that together. It may not be on Wednesday night, so I'm waiting to get that guidance on when that one's going to happen. We'll see. Anyways. It's a whole new reality now. So much love to you both. Thank you to your listeners for listening in. It's been an honor to share space with all of you.
I love
Keep
the birds.
shining.
Thank the birds for chirping. You're there in the Oregon forest, just bringing nature right into us. It's been beautiful. Even through meditation, there was this little chirping.
I know, little sound effects going on. I just want to be out in nature because one of the things I was told that I'm meant to be doing now is chanting. When we came to this land, I'll just one more thing. I know whenever I travel, I give thanks to the place I'm leaving, and I ask permission of the place I'm coming to. So if I was going to fly from here to Houston, I'd give thanks to Oregon, and I would say hello to Texas, and I would ask Houston permission to be there and to be of support to the light. Mm-hmm. And I also do that when I relocate. I ask permission of the place that I'm at, all the elementals, all the nature spirits, the oversoul of the land to be there. And when I came here, and I closed my eyes, I just saw the trees. That's what I saw. It was really vibrant and powerful and the shining. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, asking guidance on something that I'm considering doing. And she said, one of the things you're being asked to do is to tone and chant with the trees every day, because they are acting as transmitters from one tree to the next around the globe.
Oh. We did a whole show with our friend Heather, who has her whole activating the trees, and there are portals of light and communicators. Yes.
Oh, I look forward to listening to that one because this is all new to me. All right, beautiful goddesses. I know we could talk forever, so thank you for your time and your light and your love.
And don't forget, if you sign up at the goldengoddesses.org, you can potentially win a free 90-minute reading session with Ashley, and she can just talk to you about whatever's going on in your life. And
I do more listening than talking, but I do both. Sorry.
But your website is full of such great information, and I think that this next series I would love to be involved in, because I think there's a lot to be gained.
So does Aloha Goddess work for hello and goodbye?
Absolutely. Aloha.
I
love you.
And it's not just women. You have them. We've actually talked to several men, and they are all stepping into their feminine strength and balancing themselves. So it works, God and goddesses.
Well, exactly. That's what the Eros Gamos is about. Please understand, it's one of the things that happens when you start talking about the divine feminine. Some people will say, well, yeah, but it's like, I'm not a male basher. My partner, Joseph, is the greatest gift in my life. And so, yeah, so it's beautiful, and it's all of us coming together.
Absolutely.
I love you.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. JoyRideShow.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Bye.